we are talking at this, very, very difficult, probably the most difficult moment in the joint history of Belarus and Ukraine. And I just wondered, Sviatlana, where are you now? What are you doing right now? And how have what you're doing changed since the war in Ukraine started?
At the moment, I live in Lithuania, Vilnius. I had to flee. I won elections in Belarus in 2020, and because of this, I was sent out of the country. But since that moment, Belarusians have been fighting for democratic changes in Belarus. And of course, on February 24th, we entered a new reality. Before, we were fighting only against dictatorship, for free and fair elections in our country, for release of political prisoners. And now we have to fight for the very existence of our country. You heard that Putin has said that he doesn't recognize Belarus and Ukraine as independent countries. He sees our countries as vassals, his own sphere of influence, and he will never let our people choose their future by themselves. Therefore, we Belarusians have broadened our activities. On the one hand, we help Ukraine to win. On the other hand, we strengthen the resistance movement within our country. There will be a moment when Putin and Lukashenko will get weaker, and this will be a chance for Belarus to get our country back. So I see my personal role as to be a voice of Belarusians, those in country and those in exile. I have to make sure that the situation in Belarus is not overlooked. Of course, Ukraine must be in focus at this very moment, but I try to show that Belarusians also fight and that we don't give up. And the very first days of war, Belarusians were criticized for not protesting, and we massively started to explain that we protest against the war, but in different way. Street rallies are not possible now because the price is too high, but Belarusians fight in underground. I have to say that maybe people didn't understand what has been going on in our country for a year and a half, that you can't blame people living in Gulag for that they are living in Gulag. And it was and really the first rally after the war started in Sunday, it was about 100,000 people on the streets. And it was a huge surprise for us as well, because every day having new detentions under huge repressions, we couldn't expect that Belarusians will go out. But it was, people knew that they will be detained after anti-war rally as well. But they took this responsibility because we have to show Ukrainians that, look, we are not on the side of the regime, we are with you, knowing that there will be consequences for those people. You know that people who goes for rally in our country, they are brutally beaten in jails, they are humiliated physically and morally, and after interrogations, a lot of people went straight to the hospitals. But people knew that they have to, at that very moment, they have to show to Ukrainians our real position. After this rally, normal rallies happened, but Belarusians changed the methods to support Ukrainians. As you know, our Belarusian activists disrupt railway systems for Russian railway, Russian equipment, military equipment will not get to Ukraine. And our activists constantly send in pictures of military equipment, military tanks, and sent it straight to Ukrainian army for them to have time for reaction. And I have to say that it's very extremely dangerous to do this in Belarus now. I just want to explain why we are not protesting, and this is our way how we can help.
Actually, of course, from Ukraine, we're watching Belarus anxiously in the past weeks, because we get all these messages that Belarus may join, may officially join the war, Russia's war against Ukraine, because of course Belarus unofficially is in this war too, because Lukashenko's regime is providing, the airports and the facilities to the Russian military. But there have been several nights in the past months where we as Ukrainian journalists, we stayed up very late because there was some leak, some inside information that Belarus is going to attack tonight. It hasn't happened yet. What is your opinion? Why hasn't it happened yet? Why hasn't Lukashenko just sent his troops in as Putin probably wants him to?
That I hope that it won't happen, because we know that there was a huge opposition to war among military, among our army. We heard that the Belarus army resisted to enter to Ukraine despite pressure and threats, and it was supposed to join Russian troops a few weeks ago, but like something went wrong. And since the very first day of the war, we started to work with officers, with mothers of soldiers, explaining why Belarus shouldn't get involved in this fight. And on the one hand, our people, even our soldiers, they don't have this intention to fight against our brothers and sisters Ukrainians. That we always have been in wonderful relationship, and they don't understand why they have to go and kill or to be killed because of ambitions of two people, Lukashenko and Putin. And so it's not a merit of Lukashenko that our army is not fighting in Ukraine. It's the merit of Belarusian soldiers, of Belarusian civil society that started to work with our army since the very beginning of the war. So I really can't imagine our people, Belarusians, fighting against a brotherly nation. But in case that our soldiers will be forced to cross the border, we explain them how to surrender to the Ukrainian military, how to give up, because they don't have to be enemies to Ukrainians. They don't have to share responsibility with Lukashenko for this criminal order. Mm-hmm. But again, hope it will not happen.
We all hope it won't happen. But if Belarusian forces are forced to officially join the war, if they cross the border, if Belarus officially joins the war, what will it mean for the future of Belarus and for how it is seen in the world, and for the future of its people?
Our country is already considered to be a co-aggressor in this war, and it's very important part of our job as democratic forces to explain the difference between the regime and Belarusian people. But I think if it happens, Belarus will be isolated from the rest of Europe. And of course, we will continue to work on our pro-democratic issue, that we are not regime, but it will be much more difficult for us to prove this. And attitude to Belarusians has already changed since the war has started, and it took a lot of time for us to explain to ordinary Ukrainians, for ordinary, Polish, Lithuanian people, that Belarusians don't want this war. Please don't put on the same level like Russians and Belarusians. But our country will be isolated for sure. But even now, we demand that all the sanctions that are being imposed on Russia should be duplicated on Belarusian regime, because Belarusian regime shouldn't have avoid impunity, shouldn't have avoid responsibility for these atrocities, for this invasion, for being collaborator in this situation. But I think that Iron Curtain now is being put on Russia, and our country want to be on the other side from this Iron Curtain, together with the Ukrainian, with all normal countries.
What you're saying now is making a lot of sense, actually, because, from Ukraine, it looks like if Belarusian troops join the war, it will not actually, it will not really change the balance of force, because the Belarusian army is not actually that big. So it will not help Putin win the war, but what it will achieve for sure is the further isolation of Belarus. So it almost seems like Putin is doing this because not really to strengthen his forces in Ukraine, but more like to make sure that Belarus remains forever in his zone of influence and has no chance of going west. Is that the way you see it too?
Now he needs Lukashenko because he needs accomplice in this war. And it's maybe like convenient for him to keep Lukashenko in power because he's like a puppet in his hands. But I think that the toughest sanctions for Russia will be free and democratic Belarus. And that's why we demand from Kremlin, we are asking for our democratic partners to demand withdrawal of Russian troops from our territory. We understand that with these troops on the territory of Belarus, it will be much more difficult for us to fight against the regime. Of course, we understand when Ukraine wins, there will be a window of opportunity for us to get rid of Lukashenko's regime and build wonderful democratic country, which will be a good neighbor for Ukraine, for Poland, for Lithuania, Latvia, and to be in European family.
I wanted to talk a bit more about your role in all of this. So I watched some of your interviews, and I noticed that earlier, like a year ago, when you were asked about whether you consider yourself the elected president of Belarus, you said no, because you said, we know for sure that the election was rigged, was falsified, but we don't know for sure who won. But now you say that you are that you won the election, and it seems like you're shifting towards positioning yourself more of a more like the legitimate leader of Belarus. Am I right to say that there has been a shift in how you position yourself, and if so, then why?
No, I never told that we don't know who won these elections, because we have proofs. We had alternative counting of the elections where it was evident that Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya won election in 2020. So I always told that people voted for me, but I can't call myself president because we don't have real counting, like paper counting. But it doesn't matter who called himself or herself president. What is important, whom people think the leader is. Lukashenko called himself president. He made this so-called inauguration. He pretends to rule the country, but people deny him to be the leader. They hate him. So he can't for one day since 2020 feel that he's a real president of the country with the support of Belarusian people. But I feel this. Every day I'm communicating with Belarusians, and I see the attitude to I see the attitude to democratic forces, to the situation in Belarus. And every day people are fighting against the regime, against Lukashenko. So he can call himself whoever he wants, but despite of this, he will not be the leader of Belarusian people, because country is not one person, is not president or army. Country is about people, and people want changes. People want new elections, and this is what I want together with them.
We in Ukraine have, of course, followed what you have been doing since 2020, and you've taken so many meetings. You've been to the White House, and but there's one meeting that was very noticeably absent, and that is a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky. We noticed that he has not officially met with you. I think you said that you once ran into him on the sidelines of some event, but there was not an official meeting of Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya and Volodymyr Zelensky. Why is that?
Yes, you're right. I have spoken with Zelensky. We met only once briefly during an event in Vilnius. However, my team is in touch with his team on daily basis. And I understand that they don't want any public engagement with Belarus democratic forces because it can provoke Lukashenko and Moscow for escalation. I could understand it well, and we don't want to harm. When Zelensky will be ready to meet, of course, I would love to meet him, at least to express solidarity and support. But we have to work more on practical issues. Like Belarusian volunteers, doctors, human rights defenders, and activists often face problems in Ukraine. Their bank accounts are blocked and they are not trusted because of their Belarusian passports. There are thousands of them and they don't want to go to Poland, but to stay and help Ukraine in this critical moment of history. And I think we should find a way to help them, and Ukrainian government can assist.
I was just going to ask about that, about the Belarusian battalion, and we saw a wonderful video where they were taking the oath, and actually not to Ukraine while they are part of the Ukrainian forces. They were taking oath to Belarus in Belarusian language. What was that about? Does that mean that they proclaim themselves the real army of Belarus? Are you in touch with people from that volunteer battalion or region? What is happening there?
Hundreds of Belarusians are enlisted in Ukrainian army and fight in various groups and battalions in Kyiv, Odessa, Lviv, and Lutsk. And at the moment, there are two military formations, Kalinovsky battalion and the group Peramoga. They are part of the Ukrainian armed forces. You know, at least 3 volunteers were killed already. I have to say that most of fighters in the battalion don't have military experience. They are activists, students, artists, but they love Belarus and Ukraine. And, you know, they would sacrifice everything to defend our nations. They are our pride. And in the future, these people will become officers of the new Belarusian army. So their task now is to defend Ukraine, because they definitely understand that Ukraine wins this war, there will be chance for Belarusians to get rid of dictatorship. They maybe will be future core of our army. You know, there can be many scenarios.
What is allowing you to not lose touch with Belarus? Because you know you are calling yourself the national leader, right, of Belarus, and I understand that it must be very, very tough for you to you know to stay in touch with the people since you have been living abroad for a year and a half, not in terms of knowing what is happening, because there are ways to do that, but just of like not being there, not having the same experience in this past year and a half as they are having. So what does it make you feel like, and how can you be sure that you still can represent them well when you are not living the same life they are living?
No, actually, I'm communicating with different groups of Belarusians every day, with the doctors, teachers, activists, businessmen, on daily basis, and they. I feel them. We are communicating to not to lose each other moods. For me, it's more important for me to see how they are living, what they're thinking about, what are their intentions. And for this year and a half, in reality, we created rather strong civil society. And I see the voices from different organizations or initiatives about the moods in Belarus, about what's going on there, about their intentions. So I don't think that I have lost connection with Belarusians. For a year and a half, we are keeping this unity of views. We are keeping this understanding what we want to change in our country. And yes, I'm representing Belarusian on the international arena, but I'm still one of millions of Belarusians that want new elections, that want changes in our country, that are against the war with the Ukraine. So I'm just reiterating what people tell me.
I have one very important question that I wanted to ask at the end of the interview, but if you don't mind, we have a couple of questions from our supporters, from the people who are patrons of the Kyiv Independent, and we told them that we will have this interview with you, and we asked them what they would want to ask you. And there is, first of all, there are many just wishes of support, and please just pass on our kindest regards. She is an inspiration to us all, and we hope for a free Belarus very shortly. This is people from the UK writing this. There's one person asking this, and I think it's a valid question. Now that you see what is happening in Belarus and in Ukraine, and what may happen, what we all don't want to happen, which is for Belarus to join the war, do you still think now that taking a nonviolent approach to protest in Belarus in 2020 was the right way to go?
Look, this is the question I'm always asked, and I'm asking this question to myself as well. But I remember 2020. We actually, Belarusian people have never had experience in violence. They didn't want to be on the same level with the regime, to violate other people. And actually, we didn't have tools. It's easy to say, there were some groups of people who told that, look, we have to avoid peaceful demonstrations. We have to be more brutal. Okay, but with what? Do you have weapons? No. Do you have any instruments or tools? No. With the empty hands against armed people? I don't understand this, and it was our strategy at that moment. It can't be changed in this period of time. It was in the past already. Maybe if there was another person instead of me at that moment, it would be differently. But I felt Belarusian moods. They didn't want violence from our side.
I do have one final question. What is giving you hope for Belarus right now? Out of all the things that you see happening in Belarus and in the world, is there something specific that is making you feel optimistic about the future of Belarus?
I find for this year and a half, I found hope in every Belarusians, because I saw that people are not giving up despite of repressions, despite of the fear that they can be detained at any moment. They moved small steps, but they were steps forward. When the world and Belarusians, of course, saw bravery and courage of Ukrainian people, it gave us the second wave of inspiration. We saw how it is important to defend your country. You defend it differently. You participate in real war against Russian regime, and we are fighting with our tools, with what we can do in this very moment. So every day I see millions of people who are fighting for their future, and of course it inspires me a lot. It gives me hope that we will win. Ukrainians will win, and Belarusians will win.
Thank you. And we can end the interview with that. I think it's a very optimistic note.